Hi, my name is anarchist. Today we're going to be talking about my breed of anarchism, and specifically the environment that I was raised in that encouraged said anarchism to grow. I grew up in a state with the highest rate of female incarceration in the country, and we would have the highest rate of male incarceration in the country if it wasn't for northern cities. I grew up in the state that is ranked so low on the national level of public education. We are often dismissed as stupid Southerners. I grew up in a state with politicians so wealthy that they claim that they are for the working class and that the progressive people who support better conditions for the working class are the problem. Even though we never had an actual progressive person in office, yet we still claim that one of the only Democrats that we've had in the modern age, which would be from the 90s to what is now the 2020s, is the trauma that caused our system. Yet they weren't even a progressive. Yet they didn't even support the policies that they claim would never actually work in our state. And if they did, in any way, any progressive policy they actually had was never able to get pushed through and never got tried out because of the Republican politicians in our state. The Republicans of my state, and by extension the Democrats, who sit by and don't do anything radical enough to stop them, have made themselves an elite class of people. There are the voters, the people who vote for them because they believe that the Democrats are after their traditional lifestyle, that the Democrats just want them to rely on the Democratic Party for aid, when in reality, the problem isn't the fact that you would have to rely on the government. It's the fact that the government is holding you down. The Republicans are actively making it so that you don't have enough time to go to school, to get a better job than your job at a factory, than your job at a warehouse, than your job working on an oil rig, because they don't actually care about you. And the problem isn't unique to them. A democratic state like California is just as bad. California and Oklahoma mirror each other perfectly. I am from Oklahoma, if you couldn't tell by now. If you are a Californian and an anarchist, you will probably be able to see similar issues in your state, but different. They are different because even though they support the working class, they still end up hurting the working class through statism. The taxation is so bad for so many working class people that they end up fleeing to states like Oklahoma, but then they end up in even worse conditions than they were before, because now they don't even have the ability to get an education. Yeah, your taxes are bad. Why don't you come to a state where you don't get taxed barely at all, but you also don't have enough time to spend with your family because you're too busy working 60-hour weeks on a fucking oil rig, or in a warehouse, or in a factory. Your labor, your borderline slave labor, is your choice in this place. You'll always be protected by your conservative values, though. You'll always be allowed to keep the gays out of your community. You had to deal with the gays in California, didn't you? But they still don't understand. Conservatism is a concept created by the state to control them, to have them so scared of change that they keep voting for the Republicans who are actively holding them down. Republicans say Democrats, they just want the government to give them free things with welfare. But the Republicans created the state, the state of the country that caused the need for welfare. I mean, both parties do, but the Republicans are doing it the most at this moment. Welfare is a band-aid for the problems that the state creates itself by simply existing. Republicans, they actively put the money that could go to helping our education system, to helping the working class, to making, at least not even giving them welfare, but giving them better working conditions so that they could actually afford to live and actually have a better education in order to achieve greater things than their blue-collar job, which a lot of them don't even want. A lot of them would try to strive for a better job if they weren't being actively held down. But they don't want that. They give that to the military. They give that money to the military. They give that to the anti-gay policies that they try to push, to the anti-trans policies that they try to push. And they just keep going and going and going until they don't even have an excuse anymore. And we are not even close to the realization that they don't have an excuse. We are so early on in what we will soon call, once all of this is over, the fall of the American people. Because we can't exist as a state. We can't do that. And you want to know why? Because we've claimed to be a country based off liberty and freedom, yet we still uphold the same power structures that we tried to escape. You can compare both Republican and Democrat policies to that of King George III, the person that allegedly historically motivated, but there were other motivations as to why we had the American Revolution. You can compare both of them to King George III and the policies that he had and the policies that the English government had on the American colonies at the time. Both sides claim you can compare the other side to them, but they're actually covering up the fact that they are both comparable to the English at that time. We built this country on freedom, on liberty, on being against British imperialism, but then we, in the modern day, and throughout most of our history, have upheld those same power structures that we saw so oppressive in that moment. But the reason why wasn't because the elites realized they were doing wrong and then suddenly realized, well, actually, maybe it wasn't so bad. It was because they knew all along. The founding fathers knew that was bad, and they still knew that was bad after that. They didn't suddenly change their mind on it being bad. They know it was bad. They knew what they were doing was bad. But the people that came after the founding fathers knew it too. And it wasn't because the founding fathers were better than them. It was because the founding fathers knew that, but they didn't actually care about that. They pretended to care about it and called it out when the British did it, but they pretended that it was something else when they did it. We do not live in a country based off freedom. We live in a country based off a lie. And that lie will continue to thrive and to abolish the state of capital and the state of welfare. Welfare exists because of the state of capital. And of course, there are other aspects to the state that are bad. However, these are the two examples of statism that are relevant to both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. Now, the state of capital is also upheld by the state of tradition, though the state of tradition can be upheld by a more left-leaning state. Of course, a lot of left-leaning states didn't have welfare. For example, the USSR did not have a welfare system, at least not anything comparable to what we have in modern-day America. Though, in America, when it comes to the capital, the state of capital, and the welfare state upholds workers' rights without the understanding that workers will also be held back by welfare, but also we need welfare because of the state of capital, because neither of them should exist. And they also uphold progressive values such as, maybe don't blame gay people for everything going on in the country. Maybe don't blame women and trans people for everything going on in the country. And the state of capital often upholds tradition, the state of tradition. Traditionalism was invented by the state to abuse the working class. They take advantage of the values that the working class uphold, such as family values, and then they give it a label of Christian conservatism. And yeah, it doesn't exist without the state, but the way that American Christianity functions is very statist. Anyway, if you want to abolish the state of capital or the state of welfare, depending on what side of the anarchist spectrum you lean on, if you are an anarcho-capitalist, you probably care more about the state of welfare. If you are an anarcho-communist, you probably care more about the state of capital. And you can't abolish one without abolishing the other. You can't abolish a state of capital without abolishing the state of welfare, because the state of welfare actually does hold people down, as I said before, just in a different way than the state of capital. They exist together because you can't function as a society with one without the other. And that's pretty much all I need to say. If you are a conservative Christian, I am not attacking you. I don't disavow you. When I say that conservative Christianity was invented by the state, so was modern-day liberalism. People who say, we don't have to change the system, we just need to include the gays in it, are just as bad as the people who say, workers don't need rights, they just need the church. Yeah, that's pretty much equal to me. I'm not attacking any group. I'm not attacking the woke left or conservative Christians. I'm just saying that you think the way that you do because the state told you to. Anyway, bye.